Hello, welcome to the Hong Kong Open Print Shop. Today we are going to have a screen printing demonstration with Professor Stephen Hoskins. Professor Stephen Hoskins is the founder of IMPACT and the Center for Fine Print Research at the University of the West of England. And he is now enjoying being an artist for his solo exhibition, Fight of Fancy in Hong Kong. And the exhibition was opened yesterday. Professor Stephen gave us a fabulous talk yesterday. And if you are interested in the artist talk, you may visit our Facebook page and review what Professor Stephen shared with us yesterday. Now we are going to have the demonstration. Before that, if you have any questions about the demonstration, you may ask Stephen in the demonstration or in our Q&A session. Now let's welcome Professor Stephen Hoskins, and let me pass the time to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you for coming to this demonstration. I'm a screen printer. I've always been a screen printer, but I've never made just flat prints. I tend to make three-dimensional works. Sometimes I will make a flat print, but in the main, I will make three-dimensional work. So today I'm going to divide my talk and demonstration into three separate parts. The first part is I make a lot of aeroplanes and things from laser cut plywood and balsa wood. You'll see a couple of the kite structures outside, which I then screen print. One of the things is if you laser cut after you've screen printed, you end up with a burn mark across the top of everything. So what I do is I laser cut this first, and then I screen print it, and I hold everything in place with masking tape. It's very simple. So I'll screen print on this side. Today I'm only going to print on one side, but usually I would screen print all of this side and then put masking tape on this side, turn the whole thing over, and then screen print on the other side, and then pull them apart. So this will end up like this. I don't know if you can see. So this is a little wing actually based on a First World War I aeroplane, but we'll screen print on it today. I mean, it looks a bit dull and flat but when it's screen printed in bright color, it will look quite different. And that will become a print on a piece of paper like this. It will all be glued together and printed, and I may well print a little background, the equivalent of a sky for it as well. So that will be the first bit we cover. I overcompensated and bought far too many things. This is just laser cut paper that I was going to screen print on, but actually we won't be working on this bit today because I didn't bring the right stencils, and I don't think there's time. But this is actually a very similar pattern to a little print called Flight of Fancy out in the exhibition. So it gives you an idea of where a print will start and then how it progresses. I will also later on screen print on very lightweight paper, and you can pass this down. This is a piece of 13-gram Japanese tissue, and this is a piece of Nepalese paper, and we'll also probably print on a piece of what's called handmade Arabica. I like these lightweight papers because you can fold them, bend them, and they're semi-transparent. And also, people find it quite surprising that you can print on them, but you can, and hopefully we will today, just so that you can see how you can make really delicate screen printed colour. This is an example of a screen printed print. This has actually got the second piece of Nepalese paper. This has actually been screen printed and folded. So we'll do that, and then a slightly more complicated, and I'm going to go back. With digital technology these days, you draw your drawing in Illustrator, usually in my case. You print out a piece of film, you expose it on a screen print, and then you print this bit of design. Before the advent of computers, you couldn't do that, and you tended to hand draw your stencils. So this is a hand-drawn stencil, but I need that stencil with this shape. Okay, so that the two together, I want that shape on this stencil. Digitally these days, that would be very easy. You'd scan that piece, and then just combine the two together. Just quite simple. But you don't always get the same quality of drawn mark, because by the time it's been through all the process, you're losing some of the delicacy and drawn mark. So what I do is go back to an old piece of technology, which is called a pin register bar. And here's a pin register bar. In the days of photography, this is what you used. So you have this little machine that cuts a hole, and you have pins that relate to the hole. So you cut a hole, and you might be able to see these holes cut through here. It means that you can line your work up together, and then because my silk screen here has a photographic emulsion on it, and everybody tends to forget that this is a photographic emulsion, most people just take their stencil, like this one, expose it and wash it out. But actually, because these fit together, I can actually put this stencil down, which is what I've done here, and expose this stencil once. I don't wash my screen out. I take this one away, and using my pin register bar, register this stencil and expose for a second time. Then after I've exposed the screen twice, I can then wash my screen out, and I end up with the right pattern in the right place, in the right shape. It sounds very simple, but it actually opens up all sorts of opportunities that you can't necessarily do in a different way, especially in a digital age. You can mix photography and printing. In fact, this screen, how many times did we expose it before we washed it out yesterday? 4 or 5, I think, didn't we? We did 2 for this one, 2 for that one, and then 1 for that didn't work. But yeah, 5. So it's quite a simple technique, but you'll see when we print it together. The other thing it will mean is and I will show you when we print this, and we'll start with this. It means that I can print the pattern for this shape, and I can print that in one colour. We're going to print it in blue today. And then I can have the same pattern in this shape, and it will fit in the same place. And we're going to print that in yellow. But actually, what will appear is it will appear that this pattern will change colour and become a square pattern with no, and it's hard to describe, but if we print it, you'll see what I'm trying to get at. So I think first of all, we'll try some printing, shall we? Can you see enough? Yeah, can I have 3 of those? So. Masking tape. So how many people here have done any screen printing before? Have any of you done any screen printing? Just 1, 2, okay. So if you don't understand anything, because I'm assuming you might know what I'm talking about, please ask. So it's a shame me can't, oh, is that's not right, is it? Here, what I'm trying to do is, we tried to register, you can normally register each sheet of paper in the same place. But because I printed these in my studio and I've come into here, they're not necessarily fitting. So we're going to print on a piece of film first, a piece of acetate, to see where we can line everything up. Can I have a bit of the water as well? There's a little cup with some water in. Yeah, thank you. Right. Technically, and this is a thing that's a bit hard to describe, when you're screen printing these days with water-based ink, this photographic emulsion is actually quite acidic. The ink is made from acrylic polymer, which doesn't like acidity. It hardens quickly. So what I tend to do is wash the screen down slightly with an alkali, which will just neutralize the screen chemically. So we're just going to have a quick. So all I'm doing is neutralising the photographic emulsion. This is an American ink made by a company called TW in Los Angeles, who originally designed their ink for the insides of Boeing aeroplanes. So every time you get in a Boeing aeroplane, the wallpaper is screened with this American ink. Right. So we're just going to print on the bit of acetate first. So I'm going to print on the plastic film. And hope we don't hang about too long. Oh, nice colour. Yeah, go on. The talcum powder is just to, cheers, so that it doesn't all stick everywhere when we... Right, okay. Yeah, go on. Okay. Can you take the... Yeah. There we go. So that's the result if you... Oh, sorry. I told you I'd get screen printing ink on it. Sorry. Ooh, that one didn't fit quite as well. I'll give you that one for a sec. Right, so we've printed 3. Now we're going to let those dry. What we're done with the... Ah, there it is. Right. Now, cleaning up, normally you would lift this screen out, put it in the sink and wash it out. But for the purposes of demonstration today, we're going to keep the screen where it is, and hopefully we can clean this up with a bit of Mr. Muscle, which is the alkaline which softens the ink. So we'll see what happens.
So what would happen if you don't wash the screen with the alkaline?
You can wash it with water, but the ink tends to dry in.
Right.
The good thing about using the alkaline is that it softens everything and you just get more time and it's easier to clean. So hopefully we can clean this up. It's always slightly worrying when you go into somebody else's print shop. You never quite know. But it's cleaning up nicely. Yeah, let's just get to that bit first. There we are. Yeah. Yeah, you take that one. Let's take a clean one. Yeah. So actually, that's cleaned up very nicely, so we're all right. Right. So that's our first one. And I'll just clean myself up slightly. Can't leave the nice clean print shop dirty. It's a really nice clean print shop, I'm not making a mess. Right, so that's the first colour. Now, normally I would go ahead and print the second colour straight afterwards, but we need to leave that one to dry. So what we'll do is we'll print on the plywood just so that you can get to see how... Sorry, am I running to and fro too quickly? It's one of those things that printing on plywood, here we go, there you are, you can see, it's not that difficult, unless I've put it in upside down, which I have. People don't always think you can print on other surfaces, but my first screen printing job, way back in the 1970s, between my first degree and my master's, I worked at a screen printing sign company where we printed 30-foot banners for sports events, but we also printed the top of petrol pumps, we printed the sides of vans, we printed glass doors, we printed metal signs. So I learnt that you can screen print on just about anything, as long as you've got the right ink in the right way. What colour did you say we do next? We said we do, I forget too. Yeah, what have we got? Let's do blue again. We will change colour just to make it right. And again, the thing to remember is we need to desensitise the screen. And the one thing is that you need to cover quite a large area, because actually it's this bit, as a screen printer, I automatically think I need to clean this bit that I'm going to print. But actually in this case, that's the least important piece. And the most important area to clean is all this blue around it so that it's not acidic. How many of these should we do? 3 again? Or we can't do too many because we haven't got any room to put in them. So has this all made sense so far? Have you got any questions? No? Good. One of the things about screen printing that people tend to do is a lot of people print and they scrub to and fro. But the thing about good screen printing, somebody asked me earlier today about how you get a really thin layer of ink. The point is the edge of the squeegee blade is a thin line, and when you push the screen down, you only want that one edge to be touching the wood or the paper, because that creates a thin line. And if you tend to push things backwards and forwards, you're pushing ink all over the place that can come through and dribble down. So it makes much more sense to push it that way, and all I've done is I've got a clean edge there, and then, so you can see it's really, you know, just along that bottom edge. So when I pull it back, I've only printed, and I still haven't got muck on the back, or, and so we should get, oh, let's pull that again. Because I've burnt the laser cutting, we will pull this twice. And it's now stuck, yeah. I usually work, this is where I have to say, I usually have what's called a vacuum bed, so that I have a vacuum suction that sucks my, oh, that's all right. We'll let it go, and then we, probably, I would normally, just so that you can see the brown stain is still coming through. So what I would normally do is print this, let it dry, and then I'd print it again with the same colour so that I get rid of that brown stain. Do we put another one in? Right. Sorry folks, my apron's falling apart. Okay, let's try again. In, yeah. The other thing that's very important, and it will sound silly, but it's not, is that I've made sure that the cardboard, or we've made sure that the cardboard around this is actually the same height as the plywood, so that the other thing is to make sure that you've coated before you pull. When you push your ink back across the screen, that's what will print, not what you pull this way. So I used to have this trick at one point where you could put a red ink and push it across, and then clean that up and put a blue ink down and pull it this way, and it would be red. Because it's really important that this is what prints, not what that is. It's going to stick again. No, we're right. There we go. Yeah, we'll need doing again, but we won't worry for the purposes of this today. We'll print another colour later. Oh. Yeah. Being a bad screen printer. Okay, let's try again. When you print like this too, one of the reasons why I keep, by habit, pulling this forward and pushing it back is you'll notice in the exhibition that the prints with the aeroplane wings, we'll have to put it back in place again. The prints with the aeroplane wings, at the, is it? Oh, have we lost?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go on. I'll put them in. Yeah, there's the other one. You've got smaller fingers than me. There we go. Yeah, one of the problems with not having a vacuum bed. You'll notice that the aeroplane wings are printed have got what's called a blended background, that they go from blue through to another colour. If you print a blend, you have to have enough room, you mix it all, and you only make sure that you pull this front edge again, and that you don't have any ink at the back, because it will dribble down into the colour. We're going to lose those two again. No, lost one. If we got time, we might come back and reprint on those just to, there we go, to show you what it looks like once it's printed compared to the unprinted one. So if we clean up again. You okay? You do it. Okay, you okay with that? Just a word of, actually while you're doing that, a word of advice. When you clean, sorry, I'll just take over for a sec. When you clean a screen like this, you need to not push hard first of all, because what you need to do is float the ink out of the screen. If you push hard when you're washing, you push the ink into the screen and it's much harder to clean. So if you gently, first of all, loosen everything, it then comes out the screen easily. No, see, if you just keep rubbing gently, that all softens off. And then we can clean the... Now we can clean the rest of the screen. There you go. And we'll keep that for cleaning up the bits and pieces. Now, are these going to... Let's stack these. Sorry, I'm getting you. Yeah, these will be dry in a minute. What we'll do in a minute is we'll try and line up this stencil into the square, and we'll print that in a separate colour. But they need to, do they need to dry? We'll wait until. Anybody got any questions at the moment? Is it? No? Okay.
Actually, yes. So the cleaning it, because I've done screen before, but I haven't done that cleaning step before.
Right.
Exactly what is it preventing?
How do you mean? What's the Mr. Muscle preventing the cleaning?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's alkaline and the screen is acidic, the acrylic polymer, in fact it's a monomer, cross-links, and if you add acid to it, it cross-links faster and goes harder faster. So basically it dries quicker. So if you neutralise the acidity of the screen with an alkaline, the ink will sit there for longer and not dry in. And the other thing about the alkaline is, because it's an alkaline and it softens the ink, you can clean the screen in situ. The trouble with water is it's pretty neutral. So if you try cleaning the screen here with water, it's really quite hard to clean, because actually the ink's drying in rather than being softened by the alkaline. I actually, in my workshop, don't use water at all. I clean everything up with, not entirely true, I'll clean my squeegee and whatever with water, but I never clean my screen with water. It's just habitual, really. Yeah, it's all right.
So I suppose you can use different kinds of ink for screen printing, or you need to use.
Yes, I mean, I particularly like this American ink TW, which I'm so pleased that they use here, because it has a beautiful colour range. There are inks made by, I have to think back, I wrote a book on ink 20 years ago. So, there are inks made by companies like De La Rowney and Golden Acrylics and those, Lascaux, which have an acrylic base and then you add the acrylic paint in. The problem I find with those is the acrylic paint has all sorts of other things in for painting. So when you put it in a screen printing, the colour's just duller. It's not as bright and as lively as this. And this is the best ink I found, but it's quite hard to use. I'm an ancient screen printer. I mean, I learnt my screen printing way back in the 70s when we had really nice smelly solvent inks and you know, I used to get 2 seats to myself on the packed commuter train because I stank of screen printing solvent, but life has changed. So the water-based inks, I like the TW. There was a beautiful Belgian ink that was actually easier to use and really good colour, but they went bust about 5 years ago. So it's TW. I think it's the best just because of the colour, but that's a personal preference. I mean, there's a couple of others, an American ink called Speedball, but that's a bit like chewing gum, really. Probably shouldn't say that, but. We'll try printing. Sorry, I've put all these screens the wrong way round for you, and I should have put them the other way so that you could have seen what was going on. But we'll do the same as we did before. I'll stick some tape down. And actually, what we might do, if I think we have time, we might reprint that with a blend, just so I can show you how to print a blend, but we'll do that in a bit. Which colour are we going to go for? Okay, folks, you can make the choice. Hands up for green, and then hands up for yellow. Yellow. It's fine, it's yellow, good. Right, yellow it is. Oh, Mr. Muscle. And actually, one of the things, if you have done some screen printing, you can see here, see there's a kind of, when I push this down, there's a sort of whiteness appears. That's often because when you've exposed the screen, if you haven't washed all of the emulsion out, it can stay in the screen, and that makes the ink dry in as well. So it's kind of, I always rub my hands over it to get rid of the excess, and then make sure that this takes the excess emulsion off. And one of the things I think that with screen printing is people think, oh, I can just line it up and just do it and just print. And I think people forget it was originally a commercial process. And consequently, it takes a long time to set up, about 2 minutes to print, and a long time to clean it up. But actually, it was because it was designed. I mean, I was brought up printing. Well, I left my first screen printing job when I had 99,000 metal plates to print. Yeah. And even though I could print them at about 250 an hour, that was still too much work, so I left. Yeah. Oh yeah, yellow, isn't it? Oh, water. Normally I don't thin my ink with water for all the reasons that I've just been saying. Usually you can buy a retarder for this ink which just slows the drying down. And that's partially my background. I spent a period of time in the 1980s editioning prints for the hotel market, actually. And we used to do editions of 300 prints, but they were 300 times 3 because they were triptychs. And they had about 12 colours of blended, dreadful, but paid really well. And you just needed time to be able to print 300 without it drying in and having to clean up. Whereas now, I think the maximum I probably print is 30. Okay. Are you ready? Okay, let's go down. Ooh, use a cloth. No, well done. You're a better man than I am. Sorry about this, takes a while to do this. Yeah, let's go for that. This of course will come out green even though we chose yellow. Right, so this is what I was saying about getting my square into the... It doesn't show up as much as I thought the square would, but... That look right? Oh no, the top, look. That's better. That one's better. Yeah, there you go. If you've probably seen it anyway, but there we go. No, not down the bottom there. Yeah. Okay, let's go for that. We've done, haven't we? That's the third one. Yep, there we go. So that's the third one. All right, so if we clean up again. Does that make sense? What we'll do sorry, I am cleaning up because I don't like much staining left in the screen because it affects the next colour, so I just make sure that there we go. Okay, so I think all right. I think, is there a hairdryer around anywhere?
Hairdryer, yes.
Yeah. Can I just steal a hairdryer for a sec? I suppose the only thing I would say clearly about Mr. Muscle is it's a lot more expensive than water, but it does make life easier. So. Yeah, can you just dry them off quickly?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Rita.
Will take off, like if you have extra emulsion that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
If you do it a lot, does it start to actually take off?
Yeah, it would actually pick off, but in fact, you have to have a lot of emulsion there. And one of the things that, talking about coating screens, when you buy your emulsion, this is just a general thing for somebody who has coated with screen printing before, is they say, oh, coat it 2 or 3 times. But actually, that's for if you're going to print 3,000, or as an artist, it's much better just to coat it with one thin coating on the back, because if you've got a stencil like this one, and you want to get some of the subtler bits out, the thinner the coating, the more subtle the bits. But maybe after 150 prints, it will fall apart. But most artists aren't going to print 150 prints. So I actually think, A, you save emulsion, and it's expensive. B, you've got a bit more latitude with exposure. The thicker it is, the more constrained your exposure times are. So the thinner it is, the better, really. So yeah, that sort of answers your question in a roundabout way. Oh, lovely, thank you. Ooh, I'm making a mess. Just clean up that bit. Oh. The other thing is, if you've got a thin stencil and it hasn't quite exposed properly, like I've got one down the bottom here that hasn't exposed properly, sometimes giving it a good wash with a bit of alkaline will actually open it up a bit and allow you to print a bit more detail than you might have. Right, I actually think we're going to put a blend on top of this blue, just because we can, and we've got quite a lot of time. We're about an hour so far. So I think we're going to print a blend. So I'll show you. What we're going to do, blue to green or yellow to green? What's the choice? No choices? Okay. Yeah, let's try green. Blue to green. Yellow to green. Blue to green might be more interesting. Let's find the other two. Lovely top. Right. As I say, I spent 4 years printing blends like this. So the secret of printing a blend in screen printing, and this is you need at least 4 or 5 inches on either side of your, and you put your colour down, another blob of colour, and then we have the other blob of colour. And then you pull it forwards and push it back, and pull it forwards and push it back. And what you're trying to avoid is leaving anything here. All right, so you're pulling it forward, and we're just going to, now we can mix it together a bit. So we're going to mix it together a bit, give it a wiggle. Now, blue to white or blue to yellow is actually often a really hard one because it streaks lots. I don't know why, but blues and browns often streak. And what you mustn't do is what I was saying earlier, you mustn't use the back, because when you come and pull it, it will sorry, keep it up, yeah. It'll all dribble down through the screen. So what you have to do, and also, you shouldn't really be doing it this way. You should normally do it that way, because this bit's going to run into that bit, but we'll be all right. And patience is a virtue. Look, you can see how it's becoming smoother and smoother. There we go, a blend. So if we pull that, now, oh, yeah, we're right. And again, so we can pull a bit of that in, and then we have to keep going again. Okay, down. Great. So. There you go. But it does take patience. Right, if we put the next one in. Okay. Just wedge it in, push it in, yeah. Oh, that fit, yeah. Is it going to go in? Yeah. We'll be all right. Okay, you got it? Do you need to see one for the camera?
Yes, please.
Yep, that one. Do you want to show that one to the camera? Last one. Looks good on camera. That's that right? Yeah, there we go. So, as I say, and you can see, if you look here, because I've kept it on this front edge, can you see how that's where I started and that's where I've ended, but I haven't got anything on the back. And it's really important to keep it just on this edge. Having spent, as I say, 3 years of my life printing these, you learn how to just keep it even and keep it, and it's really important just to use that front edge. So again, just for the camera,
Thank you.
hang on, if it's quite hard, we'll hold it up you can possibly see if we focus. Yeah, there we go. That in the background here is where I started, the dark and the light bit, and then the lower edge is where the blend is much more even, and there's nothing on the back of the squeegee. Oh, sorry, there's nothing on the back of the squeegee, that it's all on this edge of the squeegee at the front. Okay. Yeah, we need another. Yeah, you're great. You've beaten me to it. Thank you. Sorry?
Didn't you try it?
I think we'll let it dry because we've still got plenty of time, haven't we? So we'll let them dry. And sorry, we've got an hour. Yeah. I'm rushing through the whole thing too much. But we'll clean up and then we'll print that bit in the back, and then we might come back and do a bit more on these. So, are you okay with that? Yeah, so we'll have to wait now. So, any more questions before we start? We're going to print on some of this delicate tissue. Yeah, do ask, please.
Is there any tips on making a very consistent, like, gradient?
Yes, space. So I have plenty of space because actually, you probably can't see now, hang on a sec, that the closer you get to here and you're still mixing, the more you're going to get stripes and marks. And likewise on this side. So what you do is you basically mix it here and leave that much space there. All right, so we're mixing in this area and you're mixing it until it looks even. And then you take it across. The consistency is really down to experience in the sense of how far. This was a really tight one, so there isn't really much option for moving up and down. But if you're printing something this size, then you probably have 3 or 4 different mixtures of the same ink. So you'd start with the blue here, you'd have the green there, and then you'd mix a bit of the blue and green for there, and mix a bit of the blue and green for here, so that when you actually mixed it, it evenly spread across the. And then it saves you, because if you just put blue and green in, you're going to get a narrow blend down the middle and blue and green. Whereas if you've mixed them, you can get a nice soft. Never try printing brown. I don't know why, but whenever we had to print brown to cream or something like that, it would take us a day to print one colour, because I think it's because in practical terms, a brown is mixed from red ink, blue ink and yellow ink, and I think it was the combination of the 3 pigments that always made it difficult to get an even blend. Blue to white can be difficult. There's just some colours are easier than others, and it's one of those things, I don't know the real reason why they're difficult, but some colours are difficult and some colours are easy. But yeah, as I say, I spent 3 years of my life printing.
Can I ask more silly questions?
Yeah, go ahead. There's no such thing as a silly question.
How much pigment is enough for each time you screen something? Like the amount you put onto
the amount you put onto the screen. Enough to get you to the other side without the ink running out, but not too much so that it dribbles down there, is the answer, but that's a really difficult one, I'm sorry. And to be able to print 2 or 3, it does depend. To be honest, I'm printing this way today because I think it's just easier to do, but actually I'll have to keep putting more ink in more often to get from there to there than if I was just printing this way, because I'd only be using that distance of a puddle of ink rather than this distance of a puddle of ink. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah. So I would actually, I don't know. I like printing with a narrower squeegee, and that's just me. So I'm not really answering your question as to how much ink you use, but it is actually however much gets you to the other side. Less than you'd think is one answer. As I say, I was trained on printing banners. We had a screen bed the length of this table, these two tables, and we'd have a couple of gallons of ink at a time on the screen. So you kind of just naturally learnt how much ink you would use without it all, because 2 gallons of ink, if you tip the screen up too quickly, will just run off the back and down. So you kind of just naturally learn. But the one thing I would say, the common thing is less than you think you need. And actually, if you're printing, look, I mean, what have I got in the bottom of there? I could probably print 400 of those out of that amount of ink. Okay, so yeah, I think that'd be about right. I probably reckon I'd get 300 or 400 out of that. So it's always less ink than you think you need. People mix, it's really interesting, and I bet it's a studio thing and a general studio thing. We at the university have little baby pots that are smaller than this, so the students don't mix too much in. And it saves us a fortune, and I bet the same here. If you have big pots, people mix big lengths of ink to print something like this, when actually, you know, you probably need a bit in the bottom of that much. So, yeah, but on the other hand, you know, you also need enough to feel comfortable with. But it's a really good question, because people often overprint, and certainly printing that down there, again, you need to remember that that will probably use 1/5 of the ink of this. And it's obvious, but you don't often think about it. I mean, I'd probably print 1,000 of those out of this pot of ink, you know, because there's less area for the ink to go through. And it's really obvious, but it's one of those things you don't think about, if you know what I mean. Great, okay. How are we doing for, let's just dry this up and we'll...
Can this cleaning method being applied to one
Yep.
multiple ways?
No. In fact, it's great for something like monoprinting. By monoprinting, do you mean just painting on the screen? Yeah. I wouldn't use these TW inks necessarily, but if you use an ink like Lascaux or De La Rowney or one of those, which doesn't dry as quickly, yeah, you can use this method for cleaning the screen. And the good thing about, again, because I was a commercial screen printer, the thing about keeping everything locked in means you could do a monoprint and then you can clean up, but you could rework out where and everything would be in register for putting the next colour down. So it does make sense. It's just, you've got to be able to clean the screen well.
So how about like when I'm doing monoprinting, should I also do your method like when pushing up and then push down?
Yes, I would. How many monoprints do you usually pull? 2 or 3, or?
I usually only do 1.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I would. I think sometimes it depends how thick your ink goes down. Sometimes with monoprints, if you push the ink over before you pull back, you're gonna bleed one way. And I think it's one of those things that what suits you. Because if you push the ink back, you might soften it a bit and then pull it and you'll get a nice clean print. On the other hand, if you put the ink in here and pull it, what I would call dry, the ink is going to spread that way, but it'll be cleaner and brighter. And it's really down to your preference. There's no right and wrong answer to that. But does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll just clean up a little bit more and then we'll try printing some of the tissue. Now, how am I doing? Yeah, we've got plenty of time.
Shall we take a break?
Oh yeah, good idea. Yeah.
10 minutes break or tea?
Yes, please. 10 minutes for tea. That would be great. Thank you, folks. Yeah, just rub it. Yeah, it needs cleaning from that side as well as, yeah. Lovely. Oh, yes, please. Was that okay so far?
Super.
Good.
Super. And
I'm not running up and down too much, am I? No. Good.
Yeah, have a seat.
Tom.
Oh, not that.
Yeah, I'm all right. we might do is we can set up but we probably could yeah, okay. We could probably move these. Or, hang on, wait a minute, let's just before we check.
Stephen. Yeah, good now.
That okay?
Thank you.
That's okay, good. Yeah, we should let everybody see that. They're not quite dry, I don't think. Nearly, but not quite. Let's print the tissue paper. So we're going to print some of this and a couple of other sheets first of all. Now, so are we ready to start again? Are we underway?
Yeah.
Right. This 13-gram Japanese tissue is called karami, and it looks like a normal tissue paper. It's not. It's quite interesting that because I make the aeroplane art, I get lots of correspondence from model aeroplane people who really like what I do, and they're obsessed with trying to find the right tissue to cover vintage model aeroplanes, and they pay, I don't know, $1.5 Hong Kong dollars for a piece of tissue. This is about 15 to 20 Hong Kong dollars for a sheet, because it's not a handmade Japanese paper, but it's a machine-made, very delicate, very long fibered paper. So I can do a lot with this paper and these hand-paid papers. So I'm going to print on this just because I can. This is a handmade Arabica. You can see it's made from the Arabica fibre, and it has this nice rattle to it as a handmade sheet. It takes a crease when you fold it really well, and it folds up really nicely. And the nice thing about handmade papers is you can put folds and creases in all directions. If you have a sheet of normal A4, oh, here we go. This is separate to screen printing, but a normal sheet of A4 paper, if I fold it that way, bend it that way, look, it doesn't bend very well. Whereas if I bend it that way, it bends easily. And that means it's made on a machine called a Fedrinier machine that squirts the paper pulp down, and it travels that way in about 8 seconds from start to finish. And so the paper is aligned very directionally. A sheet of artist paper like this is called a mold-made paper, and it will do a similar, look, it bends a bit more easy that way than that way, but the pulp for this, there's a big mesh cylinder that revolves slowly that picks the pulp up and takes it down, lays it down, and then it goes through a series of rollers. It takes about 20 minutes to make a sheet of this paper, The handmade paper, I'm sure most of you have seen, obviously you have what's called a decal. You have a square of mesh that you put the paper in and lift it out. And because you put the paper in and lift it out, the fibres are all in all directions. So there's no direction to a handmade sheet of paper, which means it will take a fold and you can bend it and move it in a way that you can't do with any other papers. These are slightly better. This is rubbish, but then it's made to be cheap, and you know, it is what it is. So we're going to try and print on some of these papers. Now, normally I would print this on my vacuum table, and it would normally suck this down and hold it flat. We're hoping we have put a bit of spray mount down in this bit here. Let's just try it first of all. Let's see if this one will still stick. I think it will still stick. We earlier sprayed a bit of spray mount in this little spot, so I'm hoping, yeah, look, it's still there, that we can get this sheet down. We may have to do it for the next one. I'm hoping could you pass me the Mr. Muscle? Ooh. Clean up that bit while we're about it. Now this is the only trouble. This ink we've got is, there are different screen printing inks by the company called TW. There's a series 5000 and a series 1000. And this is series 5000, which is a bit harder. But there we are, that's cleaning out. Cleaned up that bit. Right, okay. Right. Yeah. Let's, oh, green we said, didn't we? Yeah. Let's go for green. Oh, a bit of water. Can you pass me the water? So we'll just put a bit of water in our green. Tuck. When you're on a very fine detailed stencil like this one, you need a thinner ink than obviously you might print a tiny bit more. Quite interesting that tools in my whole life I've mixed my ink with a palette knife and never with a spoon, and there's no reason that you couldn't use a spoon, and there's no reason to use a palette knife, but it just feels funny oh, let's put it in that one, yeah. Right. Okay, let's go for it. Take it nice and slowly, and hopefully this tissue will stay down. Let's have a look. Ta-da! Yeah. There you go. All right. You can see how it's just torn because we've had to use spray mount rather than, but yeah, fundamentally. Oh. There we go. Something really nice about this light tissue, isn't there? Okay. Can you hold it up and I'll pull it? There we are, that one's better. So there you go. Here you are, you can have a look at that one. We'll do one more and then we'll print on the other papers. But it is one of those things, it's really nice to show that screen printing will print on something really delicate. The only thing is you also print on the other side and the underneath. So I'll put that one down. Can you pass me, let's see if we can get one of the other sheets of paper. Yeah, let's try a Arabica. So that's on the Arabica. That's what it looks like on that one. Let's try the other one. Yeah, there's a one of these. Yeah, one of those. Two of those. Let's try this. Right, okay. This one is known as J3. Look at the difference in quality on a different paper. This is a handmade sheet from Nepal. It's quite interesting because it has two different sides. If we have another sheet, we'll print on the other side of that one. Try and look at that. Can we have another of those? Yeah, we'll print on the shiny side this time. Okay. Hang on. That's all right. Okay. So let's see if it's gone in the same place. Yeah, it has. Yeah, that's a nice. So that's on the shiny side of the paper, and you can see it a bit more than on. Sorry. Here we go. This is the. Can you see that all right?
It's too shiny, sorry. Can I catch it in the
That's the shiny side. Can you catch the detail?
Yeah. I'll put it now.
And is there a sheet of the thin tissue? Let's show you the tissue as well. Thank you. And so this one's going to be much harder, and I'll try and put it on my. If I put it on my hand,
Yeah.
you can probably see the detail.
Maybe higher, I would say. Oops, too high.
Too high?
Yeah.
How about there?
It's perfect now. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. There's something really nice about an ink with white in it. I tend to find if I print. Sorry, can you still see that?
Trying to. Yeah.
If I print with an ink that hasn't got white in on these really delicate tissues, it sort of doesn't look right. Somehow the white sits on the surface of the paper and makes it look much more delicate. But there we go. Okay, can we clean this one up again? Do you mind? Can I leave you to... So I'm just going to grab a quick slurp of my tea. Sorry. Right. One of the things that, if you come down this way a sec, have we got the delicate tissue one again? Did I put it down there? One of the things that I do is I like to combine the delicate papers with what I'm printing, and probably in this case, where's your camera? In this case, I think, can you get in enough? Can I tip it up? The really delicate one, I think, is too fine to go with this. Whereas I think if I cut this one down, then it has a quality. No, there was a cutting mat. It's all right, I've just
Cutting mat?
yeah, a small cutting mat. Have you got a? Sorry, I'm going off piste now. I've got a knife. Thank you. There we go. There we go. If I was to cut this down, and notice that the nice thing about printing these delicate lines is it's dry already. I'm in less than 2 minutes. So if I was to cut this down, which we'll finish doing, and then my intention with these is probably I originally intended, and I probably will do, this is for demonstration purposes, that when I print this pattern for this to go on there like that one goes on there, I will probably, I intended to print on both sides so that the pattern on this side, the green on this side, would be a different colour on that side. But I really need my screen printing, I know I keep going on about it, my screen printing vacuum bed, because I can be much more accurate. I kind of think, let's see. I think we'll probably end up with something. Don't know. We'll end up with something on there that, I need to think about it, but actually what I'm trying to show you is that we'd fold this up so that you can see this and then see some of that and some of the other bits, but yeah, I might have to cut it in half or something. It'll give you an idea of what we're trying to do. And I like that thing of layers upon layers on top of, this one might work. I don't know, I haven't really, it's interesting because you're kind of having to think. Normally I'd spend half a day or a day in the workshop trying the different options, trying to see it, tearing them up and sticking them in the bin and moving to the next one. But on the fly, I think that's kind of, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Actually, we haven't folded the Arabica one. Let's have a look at this one. Cut this one down. There's some real satisfaction in cutting an expensive bit of handmade paper. And probably, I think, for this, when it actually comes to the actual print, actually this piece of paper is really nice. Let's cut that off there. When it comes to the actual thing, when I actually complete this print, I think it's quite likely that I'll print a different coloured line. Where should we go? Something like that. And then something like that. And maybe something like that. What's that one like? Oh, that's nicer, isn't it? Isn't that a nicer look? Shape's not right, but the colour on top needs to be darker. So, yeah, we'll work on that one. but quite interesting that you know, just how a different paper gives you that different feel and the different. I think we'll now, yeah, we've got plenty of time. We'll now print the yellow on the wings, and then we'll pull a bit of wing apart, and so you can see what this looks like partially assembled. So let's pull. We're now going to do this one, and then we might do that one on top. Yeah, okay. Actually, I should give you a bit of a health and safety warning. Even though this is a kitchen cleaning product, it's not really something you'd probably, if you're doing this yourselves, wear gloves. Okay, I'm an old person and I come from an age before, yeah, it's just, it's not going to, it's a mild alkali, so it's not going to do you a lot of damage, but it would be better to wear gloves. Right, let's just try it. Yeah, let's use that one. Can I have yellow? Yeah. Right, okay, yep. Oh, and again. Is that in place? Yeah, that's it, right, okay. I should have put more white in. There we are, there we go. Force of habit as a screen printer, I always use my head to hold a screen up, and it's one of those things that and again. Yep, there we go. Is that going to fit in? Yep. There you are, you were asking how much ink do you have on the screen. I didn't have enough then. But yeah, let's see, I haven't actually got enough ink on the screen. Well, I have, there we are, now I have. There we go. Great. It'd be quite nice when that one's drying a bit, that we'll take it apart and reassemble it, just you get an idea of what the difference between something that's got some colour on and hasn't got colour on it. It sounds obvious, but again, it's one of those things that it'll just look so different. So we'll have a clean up. Any more questions? Anybody got any?
Any tips on how to make sure the pressure is really even when you pull it?
Yes, it's quite interesting. These screens are not particularly tight. Usually mine are a bit tighter than this. And so the gap and then the pressure when you pull, the looser the screen is, the more gap I would have, more snap in. And then when you pull it, not too much pressure, because what you're trying to do is get that angled tip to go down evenly. If you put too much pressure, the squeegee tends to curl under, and then you just spreading ink everywhere. So it's trying keeping it as upright as possible. I always used to say, and it's quite hard, to try and keep a straight line going through and spread your fingers. In a sense, it's more important to spread your fingers and keep a line to lean downwards and keep a clean line than it is to sort of grab it and twist, if that makes sense. So I haven't exactly answered your question, but it gives you that, you know, I think you need to spread the weight across the squeegee. I mean, on a little one, it's easy, but when you're printing something this wide, then you really do need to spread your weight. And you want to be quite high. I'm short by European standards, and so I stand on a box to print. I have a box that's about that high that runs along the bottom, so I'm much higher to be able to get over the top. So in a sense, it's not so much as how much pressure you put as to where your centre of balance is to push down when you're printing. And that's one of those things, it doesn't necessarily seem to make much sense when you're printing 3, but if you're printing 300 3 times a day on something big, where your centre of balance is and where you're getting the pressure makes a lot of difference by the end of the day, I can assure you. So, yeah, it's just one of those things, but yeah, good question. And I think too that a lot of screen printing is, now, this is the sort of the English expression, the pot calling the kettle black, but I would say that just take it steadily and try not to rush too much. Everybody thinks, oh, it's going to dry in, I've got to be quick. But actually, if you've organised yourself and everything's set up, it's easier. So it's a kind of spend more time organising yourself and you'll spend less time printing.
Any particular tips for organizing or how to set up your workstation? Is like, I feel like no matter how organized I try to be, I immediately touch things everywhere.
I was taught by a guy, and we're talking about the 1970s, he came to work in a white suit every day. And we're talking about, you know, I'm trying to think of a big pot, a couple of gallons of ink on a screen at a time, and he never even got ink on his hands. And it's about being organised and tidy and things in the right place. And that sounds terrible, but it is true. You know, if you have a flow, it makes a difference. And it's that thing again of printing many. And if you've spent your time printing many, you know, there's a sort of standard trick of fanning a pile of paper out. I'll show you in a bit, but you can fan a pile of paper out so you can just pick them up and put them in, and you're not having to pick. And it is being organised. When I'm in my workshop, my ink's always there. So I know it's down there on the floor, and it's not on the, and it's on a piece of newsprint. And then I mix my ink elsewhere, and it's just, but yeah, I understand. But if you take your time, you don't need to be, and I'm not trying to preach, but you don't need to be messy. It's kind of, yeah. But I know it does seem, but then I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and actually that's why I like working in my workshop and not in a communal workshop, because it's mine and everything's where. It's very hard if you're going into a shop like this to actually organise your workflow, because you've got to work around a series of other people, so I do understand that. And you know, not every studio would allow you to do this, because, you know, it does make cleaning the screens up at the end of the day. You know, we are leaving some yellow stains in the screen which will have to be cleaned out at the end. Grand. Yeah, that's good, I think. I think we might be able to, they're dry. So have you got any, let's just use some masking tape. I meant to bring some frog tape with me, but I'm sure it'll be all right. We're going to print on the other side of the yellow in a bit. Uses a lot of masking tape, this.
Yeah, but long time.
Sorry? No, good. Right. Now let's hope, whoops, this is likely to be in the same place. Yep, that's fine, good. Okay. One advantage of turning something over and having pre-registered the colour that we've just printed is the registration's the same. So in a minute we'll print yellow on, actually what colour are we going to have on the other side? Should we have green on the other side? Yeah, what have we got? Yellow and blue. Yeah, let's have green on the other side. Right, let's do that third one. Here, I'll take the tape off the back of that one. Right, okay, I'll take the tape off that one. Look at that, all my trade secrets going in one afternoon. Oops. Okay. Oh yeah, can we just clean that one? Yeah. Okay, so. Right, okay, let's go. We'll put it back and pull it again because it's too pale. Actually, I'm thinking about your comment now about pressure. I'm actually, because I haven't got a vacuum, I'm actually using a lot more pressure than I would normally because I'm trying to get the bit underneath to fall away. So I'm printing more slowly. I'm just trying to, there we go, that's better. And I actually made the ink too transparent. Again, just working in a different workshop, I would normally probably have mixed a thicker, whiter ink or printed a white first to, for the purposes of this, it will show quite well. Got it? Yeah. Yeah, should be able to pull that again. Is it in place? Right, okay. Right, here we are. Okay, so when those are dry, we'll put one of these together. So I'll clean up. But yeah, I suppose, you know, we've used that, some of these inks, 2 or 3, somebody was asking earlier how much ink you use. When you see that we've used these 3 or 4 times, and look, there's still plenty of ink left in the pot, that you don't need much at all. It's just one of those. The Mr. Muscles disappeared.
What?
The cleaning pot, ah, there is. Sorry, you're spending a long time watching me clean up. But we'll just clean this bit up. Anything else I can answer while I'm cleaning up?
I'm just curious about the plywood, because I saw some of your other work there, like bigger pieces of plywood.
Yeah.
But it's easy if it's like, if you get wet, it can leak them. So how can you prevent?
It's 2 things. I tend to use what's called laser ply, which is a really good quality thin plywood. It does bend. Sorry, the question was plywood can bend when you print it, and if you're printing a large sheet of ply, how do you avoid it bending? 2 things. I use a good quality plywood called laser ply, which bends a bit less, but also it's back to, I constantly reiterate, because I have a vacuum table that sucks everything down. As long as I mask everything out, it sucks the plywood down, so it doesn't matter if it bends a bit, because it's sucked down to the bed of the press. And yeah, I mean, in actual fact, out there isn't, but I made this, in the catalogue you can see something called gull wings, which is, and that's about this big. And that was constrained by the size of my laser cutter, which is only 3 feet wide. So it's about 6 feet across. But I have a screen, my screen printing bed's about the size of this table, so I can print a large area. But yeah, the answer is a vacuum, I'm afraid.
Because you exposed the screens before the workshop, can you tell us maybe a little bit more, any advice about how to kind of judge how long to expose your screens for?
Yeah.
And also, I noticed you really maximized your use of the screens when you put your images on them.
Yeah.
Like just that process of planning that out.
Yeah, Okay, good question. And yeah, there are 2 or 3 things I would say. I always fit as many stencils as I can on my screen, but always leave 4. I used to say, and probably, I always used to say leave 5 inches all the way around. People try and get stencils up to the edge. If you try and put a stencil up here, you'll never print it and you'll get into trouble because A, you can't get your squeegee that far, and B, you're going to get, this is so much tighter here than the screen is there. So actually, I get as many as possible in the middle of the screen with plenty of space around. That's the crucial thing about planning it out. Another reason for doing that is that normally I'll print 8 or 10 colours. So actually, I normally work on a screen about this big, and I can probably get 8 colours up on the screen so that I can move along and I don't have to keep swapping screens in and out. And again, it's this thing of cleaning on the... In terms of working the exposures out, because I'm an ancient screen printer, I have what's called an exposure calculator that you used to get in the 70s, which you coat the emulsion, you expose it for a set time, and then it tells you whether it's overexposed or underexposed. Exposure is a difficult thing. It depends on the strength of your light source, how far the light source is from the screen, how old the light source is, and what type of light source it is. So there's never a right or wrong. Here, I think the exposure was probably getting close to a minute. In my workshop, our exposure's too quick, and it's about 20 seconds. It's really too quick, and so we don't get the latitude. So I would say that always try and get a good vacuum. What else can I think about exposure?
You have like a really fine image on the screen and also like a big block of color. So
yeah.
In terms of that, like did you need to...
Your exposure should be down to the fine area, not the block of colour.
You did those like separately, you didn't do those at the same time?
These we actually, we did all these in one go, didn't we? Yeah, these were all exposed in one go. So the exposure was for that, and then these just, yeah, we're fine.
If they had been something other than just like a block of color, like if it had been like a line drawing, but a more chunky line drawing, would you have needed to like adjust that?
Sometimes. We tried on this screen, and it's hard to see, there's a really...
Right, like so could you have burned like that image and that image on the same screen with the same exposure?
We tried, but actually the reason this one filled in was because we'd worked along for 4 exposures, and actually this had been out and about in the daylight too long, and so that's why that one filled in, and in fact we should have had a shorter exposure. But you know, if you actually come and look at this one, the detail on here is pretty good, and it's a pretty solid exposure. So without...
So it probably wasn't the difference in exposure time for the images, it was just that the screen had been sitting out for a while? Okay.
Yeah, there's a thing to say. In old photographic terms, this emulsion coating is about 5 ASA. Now, if any of you have come from the old photography days, you'd get 400 ASA was really fast film, 100 ASA was sort of normal film speed for negative film speed, and this is really slow. And so people, you assume you can coat it in the daylight, and you can. But once it's been exposed, it's much more susceptible to daylight. So that's why this fell in. You can trust it when you first coated it and you can have a bit of daylight, but as soon as you've exposed it to UV light, it's more susceptible. So that's a kind of, but there's a pretty huge latitude to this stuff. And again, I would say shorter exposures and thinner coatings are better, because you might have to do more spotting and it might fall apart, but you can get more detail. The recommended exposure times are still always for printing 1,000 or 2,000, or do you know what I mean? So, and unless you're just, you know, if you're just printing open blocks, then it's fine. But yeah. So yeah, does that help or not? Does it sort of answer your questions?
And it looks like you did quite a bit of painting spots.
Yes, that's because we'd exposed and double exposed. There were thin patches in it, so yes, you spot it out with some of the and I would always say a shorter exposure so that this isn't as solid, and spot it in rather than overexposing and not necessarily getting the detail out. But horses for courses again. Let's see where we are in terms of, but yeah, does that sort of, and again, different emulsion brands will have different times and different latitude. So it's quite difficult because fundamentally what's known as the actinic curve for these is quite steep, but within that you've got a bit of latitude as to what you're trying to do. And so it's always a case of expose your stencils and then think of, well, can I cut the time down? Can I cut the time down? And I would keep cutting the time down when you're exposing stencils until they're just falling apart, and then you know you increase it a bit. But that would just be the way that I work. I'm going to try and pull one of these out here if we come down this end. It's going to take a couple of minutes. Gosh, too close. The trouble, if you've screen printed and after you've, is I've made this one a bit delicate, so and I'm trying to rush. Let's put that one back in. There we are. And it's not quite dry enough, but there we are. Yeah, look, you can see I've just broken that bit. Do you want to keep pulling at those? And I'll try and do This one was a bit smaller than I would normally make them because I thought for demonstration purposes it would be better. So, there you go, look, yellow on one side, blue on the other, or green on the other, so. Are you coming out? Yeah, take your time. Got it? Yeah, if we put it down there, and then we can start sticking. Actually, folks, let's turn it the other way round because you'll get to see the yellow more. I said, I usually make them bigger than this. But I wasn't going to carry huge lumps of plywood that have been laser cut to Hong Kong. Interesting, there's not much difference between the green and the blue, is there? I should have made the green greener. How many more do we need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more. Done. Did it need to come closer for the camera?
That would be great. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you are, folks. Can we? Yeah, you can, if you're gentle with it, you can. Yeah, it's a shame the blue wasn't, the green wasn't darker, so you could see the differences more, but it's quite different to just the plywood version. So yeah, 3-dimensional screen printing model aeroplanes for you. So is there anything else I can answer questions on? Because that's kind of about as far as we can go in terms of demonstration. So is there anything that I haven't covered, do you think I might cover, or you might want me to talk about?
Can I ask what type of paper that is?
This.
Yeah.
This.
Yes,
Yeah. It's a film that's known as True Grain, made by a company called Autotype. But also this is you can get various versions of it, and it's basically a textured mylar, but it's specifically designed for painting ink onto so that it works for screen printing. You can get it in Europe. I don't know whether you can get it. It's made by an English company, and it has this, as you can feel, it has this texture on it, so that you can just watercolour on it and things, and it makes good stencils.
Can you only use like this side?
Yes, you can only use this side. The shiny side you can't use. Here, we'll pass it round. I think there's another bit there somewhere. Yeah, there's some more of it here. So that again, that I put down some wax and then painted with water on top. And you can see, you know, this was my attempt. I think this is quite interesting. This was my attempt to get a similar texture digitally, and somehow that just feels friendlier, for want of a better way of putting it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I prefer this, and I much prefer that one, whereas this one, somehow it's a bit artificial.
You just feel some water drops or...
Yeah, whereas that feels, it doesn't feel right. It's one of those, yeah. So yeah. That's and it's called True Grain. You can get cheaper alternatives, but offhand I just can't think of the name of the company that makes the cheaper version. But you can get it from Europe. It's TIUGRAIN, and it's made by a company called Autotype.
Can it be digitally printed on the film?
This
Can
one,
you fit it into a...
no.
No.
It has a kind of funny sort of wax surface, and so It only takes ink and breaks up, so you can't digitally print on it. And I think if you tried to digitally print on it, you wouldn't get it dense enough. You wouldn't get it thick enough. Because
Both laser or inkjet won't do.
laser, there is a laser equivalent for laser printing called Folex, F-O-L-E-X. But yeah, which makes beautiful stencils, really good A4 and A3 stencils.
Solid black.
Yeah, good black. Yeah, and very cheap compared to.
I'll contact you later on.
Yeah, too. Yeah, but yeah, I just like the quality of this. It's just really nice just to paint. Anything
I
else?
have a question.
Yeah.
You know, I like printing, but I really don't enjoy the cleaning process.
Yeah.
And then, do you invent any more smart cleaning process? I do block print, and
Yeah.
then after printing, we have used the toothbrush to put oil, and then after that alcohol. And the most difficult part is the oil and the alcohol always go into the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then anything I always think related to vacuum or something can easy, and then
It's interesting that there are. I wrote 20 years ago a book on ink, and I'm rewriting it to do with the changes in the environmental conditions. And interestingly enough, I don't think using, this is personal, this is me, I don't think using the oil is any longer necessarily as environmentally sound. We in our workshops in Bristol have a system, and this is just us, so it doesn't suit everybody and doesn't suit necessarily communal workshops. We have a tank that they have in garages for cleaning engines, and it has solvent that recycles. So you put your block in there and you just scrub away at it and it cycles around, but that's quite expensive to maintain. So, and also again, it's not super environmentally sound because the company comes and takes the solvent away and reprocesses it. So I haven't got a good answer for you. I think tough is the answer. Learn to clean up. Yeah. Any other questions? No.
For the registration,
Yeah.
I know you use that
The pin
machine,
register, yeah.
But if we don't have that, then we just go back to using like the cross marks.
Yes, I would say that there are a couple of things about registration that I think are quite important. So if we've got two edges like this, people will tend to put down pieces of masking tape or tape and register, and people tend to put two here and two there, and that means your paper can go that way or that way. Keep the pieces short and have two here and only have one here or one up there, so you've only got three. That way your paper can only go in one place and not more than, and again, it's one of those obvious things, but people don't think about it. The other thing I use is thick acetate plastic and double-sided sellotape, because masking tape gets soft, and if you keep moving against the masking tape, things move up and down. Whereas if you have a short piece of acetate, because not always, your paper edge isn't always the same. So it can move around, whereas if you've only got a short piece, then always only a little bit of the paper will touch it. And that means it will go in the same place every time. So I would do that. And then I should have demonstrated, when I register my paper, one of the problems of putting a piece of paper under a screen to register is you can't reach it. So what I tend to do is, and it's very simple, is to get a ruler and some tape. And then then I can move it around under the screen and make sure it's in position. It sounds very obvious, but it's an awful lot easier than trying to lift it up and move it and put it down and lift it up and move it and put it down. You can just line it up. So those are the things that I find make life easier. Anything else?
How
Sorry?
you if you have to stick the 30-gram Japanese
Yeah.
paraffin paper to the paper or other fabric something, and what will you use for the?
I tend to use a very tiny spot of PVA glue
Oh.
for two reasons. One, I used to use super glue, you know, the acrylic, but I'm now allergic to it. I spent so long building these aeroplanes using super glue that I became allergic to super glue. So, but actually the thing about PVA glue is it's sound in conservation terms, in terms of museum quality, so that if you use it, it doesn't deteriorate. And you can just use a tiny spot in places and it just holds things down. So I use PVA glue, and then you can see here, actually, I did this a long time ago. This bad stain is super glue.
Okay.
Whereas now I would put a little blob of PVA and just leave it. And this is carbon fibre rod. I quite like using carbon fibre and modern materials with. So I now stick it down with PVA, not super glue. So.
Carbon fiber. What is used in the normal life?
Carbon fibre is used a lot in Formula One cars, parts of car engines. It's very, very strong and very expensive, actually. A little bit like this is quite expensive, but it just, you can get, I mean, that's half mil, you can get really delicate bits of carbon fibre. I used to use a lot of glass fibre, but A, the bits come off on your hands, and B, carbon fibre bends better and is stronger. So, yeah. But yeah, really expensive Ferraris and Porsches and things tend to be built of carbon fibre these days.
How do you get those ideas for finding the right replacement? Like you change a lot, like from glass fiber to carbon fiber, like super good.
Good question.
Because you have batteries, right?
Sorry?
Because you have factory, so you go around.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I do spend a lot of my life in factories. Yeah. Yeah, just thought and you know, some things work, some things don't work, and yeah, you in a sense, yes, because I mean, I talked yesterday. A lot of people might not know. Half of my life is as an academic who does a lot of technology work and a lot of industrial work. So yeah, I have spent a long time walking around factories finding materials, and I just like materials. So if something doesn't work, I'll try something else. And yeah, part of my job does mean I have access to materials that most people wouldn't be able to get hold of. That's very true. Yeah. So, and I've never really thought about that. It's one of those things that, yeah, I can, you know, if I want something CNC milled or 3D printed, or, yeah, I can just do it. So, yeah. That's interesting, because, yeah, it's quite good to be asked those things, because sometimes I don't think about what I have access to.
Because yesterday you mentioned, like, you also referenced the Asian Egyptian, like,
Yeah.
the solution for 3D printing, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm curious how you get all those ideas.
Because you can. It's a bit like I said yesterday, you know, it's really nice to think, oh, let's try that, and somebody will give me the money to do it and I can do it. So yeah, I've been very lucky in one sense. I mean, yeah. But yeah. Anything else? That it? We done? That's about right, isn't it? Have we?
Yes, thanks Stephen for showing us such a unique screen printing process, and thanks all for joining us today. Yes. Thank you all. The exhibition Stephen Hoskins Fight of Fancy, and this demonstration is part of the program Beyond Paper, which is funded by ACDFS, the Art Capacity Development Funding Scheme. Thanks ACDFS. Also, the journey of Professor Stevens in Hong Kong is funded by UWE, the University of the West of England. Thanks UWE for supporting. So thanks ACDFS and UWE. The exhibition is now open till March, so do visit our gallery and see the delicate print and print installation. And lastly, yes, okay, look at this. Our exhibition catalog is now on sale and is 90% off. That is 108 Hong Kong dollar. So if you want to get one, please contact our staff directly. So that's all for today. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.